When Robert Baratheon rode north to Winterfell, the snow was still light on the ground. He came not just as king, but as a tired old friend. Years had passed since the war, since they fought side by side to bring down the Mad King. Now, Robert was fat, his eyes heavy with drink and regret, but his voice was still strong when he said, "I want your son to rule after me." Ned Stark froze. He had expected many things. A marriage proposal between Robert's son and Sansa, maybe talk of war again. But this... Robert wanted to name Robb Stark, Ned's eldest son, as his heir, king of the Seven Kingdoms. "Your boy is strong," Robert said, "and I trust him more than I ever will Stannis or Renly. I don't need another Lannister boy with soft hands. I need a wolf, a true wolf," Ned tried to argue. He said Robb was too young, only 16, that the throne belonged to the Baratheons by law. But Robert waved his hand. "Law didn't stop me from taking it from Eris," he said. "I need someone I trust when I'm gone. I'm dying, Ned. I feel it." Robert had been coughing blood in the mornings. His hunts tired him. His mind wandered too much. He thought he had more time, but deep down he knew his days were numbered. And his son, Joffrey, was not truly his. He knew it now. Something in that golden hair never sat right with him. He never spoke it out loud, not even to Ned, but he knew. So Ned agreed, not easily, not without fear. But for the good of the realm, and to save the kingdoms from war, he agreed. They made a secret plan. Robb would be sent to King's Landing with Ned, to serve as a squire and learn courtly ways. Then, when the time was right, Robert would name him as his heir. The lords of the realm would be surprised, maybe even angry, but they wouldn't dare challenge Robert Baratheon. Cersei Lannister smiled politely when she heard of Robb's arrival, but her eyes were cold. She asked no questions, but she watched everything. Robb arrived with a small escort, Grey Wind at his side and Jon Snow by his back. Jon had begged to come, and Ned allowed it. Better he be near family in the south than alone in the north. King's Landing was loud, hot, and dangerous. Robb hated the Red Keep. He missed the cold winds and quiet nights of Winterfell. But he stood proud beside his father and the king. He trained hard. He kept his mouth shut. And when Robert introduced him to the small council, saying, "This is the boy I want to rule after me," the room went silent. Littlefinger raised his eyebrows. Varys said nothing. Renly laughed a little too loudly. Stannis clenched his jaw. But the king's word was final. Robb Stark was now the future king. It didn't take long for whispers to start. In the halls, servants spoke of the Wolf Prince. In the streets, rumors spread that the king had gone mad, placing a northerner above his own kin. And in the shadows, the Lannisters began to plot, because Cersei knew if Robb was king, her son Joffrey would never sit the throne. And if Joffrey didn't wear the crown, her secret would one day come out. Ned tried to stay ahead of it all. He warned Robb to trust no one. He told Jon to keep his sword close. But the Red Keep had eaten greater men than him, and it was already watching, waiting for its next victim. Then came the hunt. Robert's final hunt. The boar, the wine, the spear. Some said it was an accident. Others whispered poison. But when Robert Baratheon died, and Ned read the sealed letter naming Robb Stark as heir, not Joffrey, the Seven Kingdoms trembled. Robb Stark, not yet 17, was now to be king of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, and the Lannisters would never let that happen. The day after Robert Baratheon died, the Red Keep felt colder than Winterfell ever had. The black banners flew from the towers. Bells rang loud across King's Landing. People wept in the streets, but most didn't cry for the man. They cried for what would come next. A kingdom without a king was a kingdom ripe for blood. Ned Stark stood alone in the chambers of the Hand, holding Robert's final letter in his hand, the one sealed with the royal stamp, naming Robb Stark as heir until he came of age. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what was about to begin. He knew what he had to do. He had to call the small council, read Robert's wishes aloud, and place Robb on the Iron Throne as protector of the realm. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. But he was already too late. Cersei had moved first. By nightfall, Her guards had taken control of the Red Keep's main gates. Gold cloaks loyal to her cousin, Sir Boros Blount, were seen patrolling the halls. Servants were replaced, maesters silenced. And in the throne room, Joffrey Baratheon had taken his father's crown and placed it on his own head, without the council, without the law, without the truth. He sat smugly, surrounded by Lannister knights, while the small folk bowed out of fear. When Ned heard this, he rushed to the small council chambers with Robb and Jon at his side. Barristan Selmy joined them, troubled and confused. "This is not how a king is chosen," he muttered under his breath. In the council room, Cersei was already seated calm as still water. Beside her stood Jaime Lannister, leaning against the wall with a wicked smirk. Littlefinger was there too, playing with his dagger as if none of this truly mattered. Varys sat silently, watching everything with owl-like eyes. "My son is king now," Cersei said plainly. "He sits the Iron Throne by right of birth. We thank Lord Stark for his service as Hand, but his duties are no longer needed." Ned slammed the letter down on the table. "This is Robert's final will, sealed by his hand. He names Robb Stark as heir and asks the council to honor it." Cersei didn't even glance at the parchment. "Robert is dead." His will died with him. The room froze. Then Robb stepped forward. His jaw was tight, his voice steady. "You all know I'm not here for ambition. My father did not want this. But the king made his wishes clear. You dishonor him by ignoring his last words," Jaime chuckled. "You think the realm will kneel to a wolf pup from the north? You don't belong here, boy." Jon's hand went to his sword, but Ned stopped him. "This is treason," Ned warned. "If you crown Joffrey, a bastard born of incest, you doom this kingdom." That word, bastard, cut through the room like wildfire. Jaime's smile vanished. Cersei's eyes narrowed. The game was no longer politics. It was war. Within the hour, chaos spread through the Red Keep. Ned sent ravens to Stannis and Renly, hoping they would rise against the Lannisters and support Robb's claim. He ordered trusted guards to protect Robb and Jon. He begged Ser Barristan to stay by the boy's side. He will need a true knight in the days ahead. But it wasn't enough. Littlefinger came to Ned privately that night. "You'll never win this, through honor, my lord," he whispered. "These lions don't play with rules. They play with knives." Ned stared at him. "Then I will bleed with honor before I let my son wear a stolen crown." "You'll bleed, Ned," Littlefinger said, "but your son, he may never live long enough to wear anything." And then the trap was sprung. Before dawn, the gold cloaks turned on Ned's men. Loyal guards were butchered in their beds. Jon was taken prisoner outside the training yard, bloodied and bruised. Robb, barely awake, was dragged from his chambers at sword point. Ser Barristan tried to fight, but the numbers were against him. Ned was arrested by Sir Meryn Trant and his Lannister guards. He didn't resist. He only looked at his son as they pulled them apart. "Stay strong, Robb, no matter what happens. You are the king now. Remember that." Robb's eyes burned with fury. He shouted, "Father!" as they dragged him down another hall, away from the dungeons. But Cersei wasn't done. She didn't just want Robb imprisoned. She wanted the North to suffer. She knew what would happen when the Raven reached Winterfell. She knew Catelyn Stark would rise in fury, that the bannermen of the North would march south, with swords drawn and fire in their hearts. She wanted war, because in war, truth dies. And in death, power is reborn. And in death, power is reborn. The Raven reached Winterfell in the dead of night. The black wings brought more than words. They carried pain, fury, and the scent of war. Catelyn Stark read the message with shaking hands. It was short and cold. Lord Eddard Stark imprisoned. Robb taken. Treason declared. Lannisters rule King's Landing. Prepare. She dropped the scroll. Maester Luwin caught her before she fell. "My lady!" "Call the banners," Catelyn whispered. Then she screamed it. "Call the damn banners!" Every house in the North, every man who can hold a sword. The North had not marched in decades. But at her word, they began to move. From Bear Island to the Dreadfort, the message spread like wildfire. House Mormont sent warriors led by a fierce woman with a scarred face. The Karstarks rode in with black fury in their eyes. The Umbers, wild and loud, swore vengeance before the gods would, and standing before them all, now a man forged by betrayal, was Robb Stark's younger brother Bran. Trying to act strong, "My brother is the true king," Bran told the gathered lords, "and we ride south not to beg, but to take back what was stolen." Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Robb Stark sat chained in a cell deep beneath the Red Keep. The damp walls stank of mold and rats. His wrists were bruised from the cuffs. His pride was shattered but not broken. He hadn't seen Jon in days. He feared the worst. But one night, just as sleep tried to claim him, the door creaked open. It wasn't a guard. It was a girl with dark eyes and silent steps. "Arya?" he whispered. She nodded, raising a finger to her lips. "Come quick. I don't know how long we've got. No time. I'll explain later." She'd been hiding in the tunnels of the Red Keep ever since Ned's arrest, disguised as a kitchen boy, listening, watching, waiting for the right time. She had heard the Lannisters planned to send Robb to Casterly Rock to be used as a bargaining piece. Or worse, a message. So Arya made a choice. One she knew her father might have never approved of. She killed the guard. The man had been kind to her once, gave her bread. But he stood between her and Robb, and she couldn't take the risk. Now, covered in blood, she led her brother through hidden doors and secret halls, passed down through whispers of old Targaryen madness. She had learned much while hiding, but they didn't make it far. In the courtyard, just before they reached the city's edge, a dozen gold cloaks surrounded them. "Going somewhere, Your Grace," sneered Sir Meryn Trant. Arya pulled out the small blade Jon had given her. "Don't touch him," Robb stepped forward. "She's just a girl. Let her go, and I'll come quietly." "I don't take orders from traitors," Sir Meryn said, raising his sword. And then, chaos. From the shadows, a wolf howled. Grey wind. He leapt through the guards like a storm, tearing throats, breaking bones, his eyes glowing with fury. Arya ducked under a sword swing and stabbed a guard in the thigh. Robb picked up a fallen blade and fought like he was still in Winterfell, training with Roderick Castle. In minutes, it was over. Blood painted the stones. Grey wind stood over the last guard, growling. Robb fell to his knees, panting. "Thank the gods," Arya grinned. "Told you I could get you out, but Jon wasn't with them. They found him locked in a different cell, tortured, bruised, but alive." He looked up at Robb with tired eyes. "Took you long enough?" Robb smiled. "Come on, brother. Let's go home." They escaped the city before dawn, hidden in a merchant's cart, cloaked and silent. Grey wind ran beside them, a ghost in the mist. Behind them, the Red Keep roared with anger. Cersei woke to news of the escape and shattered a goblet against the wall. "Find them!" she screamed. "Bring me Robb Stark's head!" But the wolves were already gone, and far to the north. 30,000 northern men began to march. The north hadn't gone to war in 100 years. Now they marched not just to free they marched to put a wolf back on the throne, and the realm would drown in blood before they bowed to lions again. The road back to the north was long, but the fire inside Robb Stark burned hotter than ever. He no longer travelled as a prisoner, he rode free, sword on his hip, grey wind pacing at his side, and Jon Snow behind him, bruised but alive. Arya was there too, silent and watchful, still stained with the blood of the guard she killed. None of them spoke of it, but something in her eyes had changed. By the time they crossed the Trident, ravens had flown ahead of them. Robb's escape became legend before his feet ever touched northern soil. "The Wolf King lives," that was what the small folk whispered. They painted dire wolves on their doors. Some even claimed Robb had killed 20 men with his bare hands, that he had turned into a beast and chewed through the Red Keep. The stories grew wilder by the day, and Robb said nothing to stop them. Let the realm believe whatever it wanted. He needed the fear, he needed the respect, because ahead of him an army waited, north of the Neck. 30,000 strong gathered near Moat Cailin. Stark banners flew like storm clouds. Great Jon Umber shouted war songs beside the Karstarks. The Manderleys brought ships, steel and gold. House Glover, House Reed, even the crumbling towers of House Flint, they came, not for glory, not for gold, but for the boy who had returned from the jaws of the lion. When Robb rode into camp, they cheered like winter had ended. Grown men wept. Catelyn Stark rushed into his arms, gripping him like she would never let go again. "You've come back to us," she whispered. "By the gods, you've come back." That night, under a pale moon and a sky full of stars, Robb stood before his bannermen. He wore dark leather armor, a white direwolf stitched over his heart. He looked older, harder, no longer a boy. "My father is in chains," he said, voice steady. "My brother was beaten. My sister forced to kill. I was caged like a dog while liars stole my throne. The lions think we are broken. They think the North will kneel." He drew his sword and raised it to the firelight. "I say we teach them fear." The men roared, and so they marched. They moved fast. South through the neck, past the twins. Walder Frey, the old rat, tried to bargain for daughters and gold. But Robb promised him something far better, vengeance against the Lannisters. Past the Green Fork into the Riverlands. And there they met the first Lannister host. Tywin Lannister had sent his son Jaime with 12,000 men to crush the Northern Rebellion early. Before it grew teeth, Jaime laughed when he heard the young Stark was coming. "He's a boy playing at war," Jaime told his captains. "Let's see how well he plays when I break his army in half." But Robb Stark wasn't playing. At the Battle of Ash Hollow, the wolves showed their fangs. Robb split his army in two. One half, led by Rose Bolton, met Jaime head-on. A brutal, savage clash that spilled blood into the rivers. The other half, led by Robb himself, flanked through the woods, hidden by thick fog and the silence of night. Jaime never saw it coming. Grey wind struck first, leaping through the firelight, tearing into nights. Robb followed close behind, blade flashing. The Lannister rear fell into chaos. Horses screamed, men scattered. Robb didn't stop. He rode straight into the storm, shouting the old words of the North. The North remembers. The battle raged till dawn, and when the sun rose, Jaime Lannister was a prisoner, his golden armor smeared with mud. His pride shattered. The North had won. Catelyn Stark looked down at the Lion of Lannister in chains and said, "Perhaps now they'll listen," but Robb knew better. This is just the beginning. He sent ravens again to the Vale, to the Stormlands, to Dorne. He offered alliances, oaths and truth. The king is dead. His bastard son wears a stolen crown. And my father, the last man Robert trusted, rots in chains. But not all lords wanted truth. Some wanted power, and others wanted revenge. As the North celebrated its victory, a word reached King's Landing. Jaime Lannister had been taken. Cersei's scream could be heard across the keep. She turned to her council with murder in her eyes. "If they want war," she said, "then war is what they'll get. I want the boy's head. I want the North burned. I want blood on snow." And so from one victory came a darker storm. The wolves had drawn first blood, but the lions were far from done. First blood, but the lions were far from done. King's Landing burned from the inside out, not with fire, not yet, but with whispers, fear and fury. The nobles smiled politely, but behind closed doors they counted soldiers and gold. They knew the truth now. The wolves had broken free. Jaime was gone. Joffrey's crown sat crooked on his head, and Queen Cersei was unleashed. The news of Jaime's capture hit her harder than Robert's death. The Golden Lion, her favorite child in armor, was a prisoner of the Starks, shackled like a common thief. Her perfect world, built on lies and blood, was cracking. So she did what she always did when threatened. She struck first. And she struck cruel. She summoned the small council and gave them two orders. "Send a message to the North," she said. "One they'll never forget." The first part was easy. Gold was sent to mercenaries in the Riverlands with a quiet instruction: raid, burn, kill. Any village that flew a direwolf banner was to be wiped clean. Children, old men, farmers, it didn't matter. The North would learn that this was not a game. The second part was worse. Cersei went to the dungeons herself, past the screaming halls and rusted gates, down into the dark where her most valuable prisoner waited, Eddard Stark. He sat in silence, chained to the wall, eyes tired but unbroken. He looked up as she entered, come to gloat. he asked. She didn't smile. I came to offer you a choice. You don't have any. Oh, but I do, she said. And you'll listen, because this concerns your son. She leaned closer, her voice a hiss. I will send your head to Robb, or I will send your words. Ned frowned. I want you to kneel, she whispered. Publicly. Write a letter. Admit to treason. Say Joffrey is the rightful king. Beg forgiveness. If you do, I will send you to the wall. You'll live. And your son's rebellion will lose its purpose. Ned spat blood on the floor. You want me to lie to the world so your bastard can keep his stolen crown? I want peace, she said coldly. And if I can't have it, then I want the North to burn. Ned stared at her for a long moment, and then he said nothing. That same night, Sansa Stark was dragged before the Iron Throne. She begged for mercy, weeping on the marble floor. Joffrey watched with amusement. Please, she cried, spare my father. He's a good man. Joffrey leaned forward, smiling like a boy who just pulled the wings off a fly. Good men die every day. In the north, Robb heard of the attacks on the villages first. Dozens dead, entire towns burned, women raped, children nailed to doors with lion sigils carved into their skin. His council begged him to wait, to plan carefully, to respond with caution. But Robb didn't wait. He sent ravens to every corner of the Riverlands. No more mercy, he wrote. For every northern life taken, I will take 2 lions. He split his army again, striking from both sides, hammer and anvil. His war council said it was reckless, but Robb knew something they didn't. Rage moves faster than reason. In a week, 5 Lannister outposts burned. At Stonebridge, he personally led the charge, cutting down Sir Adam Marbrand and freeing 200 Stark prisoners. Grey Wind ran wild, his jaws dripping with vengeance. But then the second raven came. It carried no seal, just a blood-stained scroll. It was from King's Landing, from Ned Stark. Robb opened it with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the page. His face went pale. What is it? Jon asked. Robb looked up, voice hollow. My father confessed. No, Jon whispered. He wouldn't. He did. He named Joffrey the true king. He begged the realm for forgiveness. He's asked me to lay down my arms. The tent fell into silence. Rose Bolton spoke first. He wrote it to save your life. You know that. I do, Robb said. But the realm won't see it that way. The next day, 1,000 ravens flew from King's Landing, each carrying the same message. Ned Stark confesses to treason. Robb Stark is a rebel. The North must surrender, Cersei smiled. Her trap had worked, but then the realm changed again, because 3 days later another raven arrived. This one was short, only 6 words. They executed Lord Eddard Stark publicly. The raven landed just before dawn, black wings glinting under the pale morning sky. It perched on the edge of Robb Stark's tent, talons clicking against the wood. Jon Snow reached for it first, untying the small scroll from its leg. It was light, too light. He handed it to Robb without a word. Robb broke the seal with trembling fingers. He read the words once, twice. His jaw tightened. The scroll fell from his hands. Arya, sitting near the fire, caught it before it hit the ground. She read the 6 words, and her mouth opened, but no sound came out. They executed Lord Eddard Stark publicly. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. Then Catelyn made a sound that was not quite a scream and not quite a sob. She fell to her knees, clutching the earth as if she could hold on to the world before it shattered. No, 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 she whispered. Not like this. Robb didn't move. He stood frozen, fists clenched, eyes staring at nothing. Jon tried to speak but stopped. Arya stared at the fire, her face hard and pale, like she'd been carved from ice. The tent filled with murmurs. Great Jon Umber punched the table. Roose Bolton's eyes glittered with quiet calculation. This changes everything, he murmured. Finally Robb spoke. They killed my father, he said quietly. No one answered. They killed my father, he said louder, while my sisters watched, while the realm laughed. They think I'll kneel. They think I'll crawl to them like a dog. His voice cracked, but his eyes blazed. Not this time. He stepped outside, into the cold morning, where thousands of northern soldiers were gathering for the day's orders. They looked at him, waiting. They saw his face, pale and hard. They saw the scroll crumpled in his fist. "What's happened, my lord?" One of them called out. Robb lifted the scroll high. His voice cut through the camp like a blade. "They executed my father. The lions cut off his head. The man who rode with their king to war, who saved their realm, who kept his honor when they sold theirs, dead." The soldiers erupted in shouts and curses. Steel rang as swords were drawn. Robb raised his hand for silence. "I came south to free my father. He is gone. I came to fight for Robert's will. The realm has spat on it. I came to serve the throne. The throne has murdered my blood." He drew his sword and thrust it skyward. "I am done kneeling." A hush fell over the army. Then great John Umber stepped forward, raising his own blade. "The king in the north," he bellowed. The words echoed across the camp. "The king in the north," shouted another and another. Soon the whole camp roared it, thousands of voices rising like thunder. "The king in the north! The king in the north! The king in the north!" Robb stood in the center of it all, sword raised high, grey wind at his side, howling to the sky. The boy from Winterfell was gone. In his place stood the young wolf, not just a lord's son, but a king. Catelyn watched from the edge of the crowd, tears streaming down her face. She had lost her husband, but she saw something else now, a chance to strike back. A chance for the North to rise. Later in the war tent, Robb's council gathered. Maps covered the table. Pins marked Lannister strongholds. His voice was no longer tentative. It was a command. "We strike the Riverlands first," he said. "Free our allies. Secure the crossings. Then we push south into the Westerlands. Burn their fields. Take their castles. Bring Tywin Lannister to his knees." Rose Bolton inclined his head. "And your sisters?" "They're pawns," Robb said bitterly. "But they're alive. That means leverage. We take Jaime to the twins. We bargain from strength." Catelyn flinched at the coldness in his tone. "Your father would have wanted—" "My father is dead," Robb snapped. The tent went silent. He lowered his voice. "I'll not make his mistakes." Outside, the army prepared. Blacksmiths hammered steel late into the night. Banners of grey and white rose above the camps like snow on storm clouds. Arya sharpened her blade quietly, her face hard as stone. Jon swore himself to Robb's side, a silent shadow, his own rage burning like a hidden flame. Word spread fast. The Vale heard it first, then the Stormlands. Even in dawn, whispers carried on the sea winds. The North had a king again, and in King's Landing Cersei read the reports with a hand that trembled for the first time. The small folk spoke of a wolf king who fought like a storm, who had taken her brother, who would come for her sons. She smashed the goblet against the wall. "Let him come," she hissed. "We'll break him like we broke his father." But in her heart, she knew something she would never admit. This was no longer just war. This was vengeance, and vengeance had teeth. It was vengeance, and vengeance had teeth. They struck at Harrenhal first, the blackened fortress that still stank of dragonfire centuries after Aegon's conquest. The Lannisters had turned it into a prison camp, a place for interrogations and slaughter. But now Robb Stark turned it into a symbol, one that screamed, "The North is not afraid of ghosts or lions." Roose Bolton led the assault. His banner was pale and flayed. His methods were colder than snow. He took no prisoners, showed no mercy. "Let the lions know," he told his men. "We do not forget, and we do not forgive." By nightfall, Harrenhal burned. Bolton sent cages of severed hands back to Casterly Rock. "For every Stark child lost," the note read, "a lion loses a hand." Robb didn't write the message, but he didn't stop it either. In the Riverlands, his armies moved like fire through dry grass. They liberated Tully strongholds, drove out Lannister garrisons, and welcomed reinforcements from River Run. Robb reunited with Edmure Tully, his uncle and Brynden Blackfish, his great-uncle, both seasoned warriors. Brynden eyed him hard, then nodded once. "Your father would be proud." But Catelyn only looked at her son with worry. "You win battles," she said quietly. "But at what cost?" "I see your eyes growing colder by the day." "He was my father," Robb replied. "And they made me watch him die through ink and words. I'll give them something real to fear." He turned away before she could answer. While Robb waged war, Arya Stark travelled through a different kind of battlefield. The streets of pain and lies, she moved with a band of orphans and escaped prisoners across the riverlands, hidden under dirt, fear, and steel. No one saw a Lady of Winterfell anymore. Just a small, wild girl with dead eyes and a dagger always near her fingers. She spoke less each day. Each night, she whispered names before sleep. The list grew longer: Cersei, Joffrey, Meryn Trant, Eileen Payne. Sometimes she added new names. She didn't know what vengeance would look like when it came, but she knew it would be sharp and bloody and quiet as snow. One evening, a man with strange eyes and a silent voice saved her from a pair of bandits. He gave her 3 kills, any 3. She gave him 3 names from her list. By morning, 3 men lay dead with smiles carved into their throats. The man disappeared. But Arya didn't thank him. She didn't feel anything at all. Far to the east, near the edges of Robb's growing camps, Jon Snow stood guard. He had refused the Night's Watch vows after escaping the Red Keep. "The realm broke its promises," he told Robb. "Why should I keep mine?" But he hadn't fully joined the war either. He lingered on the edges, torn between oaths, blood, and something darker. That something now had a name: Ygritte. She was a wildling scout captured in a skirmish near the neck, red-haired, fierce, unbroken, even in chains. Jon guarded her, spoke with her, argued with her, then stopped arguing and started listening. "You think your war matters?" She scoffed. "It's all lords fighting lords. North of the wall, we fight to breathe. You lot fight over chairs." He should have hated her. He didn't. One night she escaped her cage. Robb ordered a small group to hunt her down. Jon rode with them, and when they found her cornered in a ravine, bow drawn, Jon stepped between her and the arrows. He let her go. "I never saw her," he lied to Robb. Robb didn't push, but he watched Jon longer after that, with eyes that saw everything. "Don't lose yourself chasing something you're not sure you want," Robb told him one night. Jon didn't answer. He didn't know what he wanted anymore. In King's Landing, the Lannisters tightened their grip. Cersei brought in more mercenaries. Joffrey screamed for more heads. Sansa, still trapped in the Red Keep, became a political hostage, dressed in fine silk but guarded like a prisoner. She heard rumors every day. "The North has crowned a king. The Lion Prince has been taken. A Stark girl runs with wolves." She clung to those whispers like prayer. One night, she looked into a mirror and whispered to herself. The North remembers. She hoped someone was listening, and across the realm, the balance tipped. The war was no longer politics. It was personal. Every blow Robb struck was returned in blood. Every step south brought more fire. The wolves were no longer just marching. They were hunting. And the lions, once proud and golden, were starting to bleed. The road to King's Landing was paved with the dead. Robb Stark marched with an army of over 40,000. Northmen, Riverlanders, Vale Knights, and even rogue Stormlanders who had turned against Joffrey's madness. They didn't call him the young wolf anymore. They called him the Storm of the North. Every village they passed flew wolf banners. At the Trident, he crushed a Lannister host led by Kevan Lannister himself. At Maiden Pool, his scouts burned the last lion banners from the east. Now, only the capital remained. Behind its walls, King's Landing boiled with fear. Goldcloaks roamed the streets like jackals. Cersei reinforced the Red Keep with wildfire. Joffrey's snarled orders no one listened to. Sansa, locked in the Queen's Tower, watched the horizon daily, praying to see a direwolf. Then one night, she did. Fires lit the sky. The northern army had arrived. Cersei summoned the small council. Half of them had already fled. Littlefinger was gone. Pycelle dead. Varys vanished like a shadow. Only Tywin Lannister remained, riding hard from the west to reinforce the city, but he was too late. Robb didn't wait. He attacked before dawn. Grey wind led the charge, a grey blur of death through the gate guards. Siege towers rose from the mists. Arrows darkened the sky. Northerners poured through the broken outer wall, roaring Robb's name like a war drum. Inside, King's Landing turned to chaos. Civilians screamed. Merchants fled. The bells rang not in mourning, but in panic. On the Iron Throne, Joffrey wept. "This is my kingdom," he shouted. "Make them stop." Cersei gripped him tightly. "We fight to the end. We hold the throne." But her voice trembled. Outside the Red Keep, Arya Stark stood in shadow, a dagger in hand, her hair soaked with sweat and blood. She had entered the city days before the army. She moved through the streets like a whisper, killing guards, breaking chains, searching, and now she found her. Sansa locked in her tower, alone. Waiting, Arya opened the door. Sansa gasped, "Arya?" But Arya didn't smile. She just pulled her sister close. "We go. Now." They escaped through the tunnels beneath the keep, the same tunnels Arya had memorized years ago. They passed old bones, secret doors, ghosts of kings. They emerged in the city just as the last gates fell. At the Red Keep, Robb entered with fire behind him. Lannister guards dropped their swords and knelt. The throne room echoed with silence. And there, at the base of the Iron Throne, stood Joffrey, his crown tilted, sword shaking in his hand. Beside him, Cersei stood tall, though her dress was torn and her eyes hollow. "Do it," she said. "Kill him. Crown yourself a Stark king." Robb looked at the throne. It was smaller than he imagined. "I didn't march for a chair," he said. Cersei laughed bitterly. "Then why did you come?" Robb turned to Joffrey. "For justice!" He raised his sword. Joffrey screamed and ran, but Jon Snow stepped forward and stopped him with a single, clean thrust to the gut. The boy king fell without glory. Cersei lunged, screaming like a dying thing, but Arya's blade found her neck before she reached them. Not fast, not merciful, but final. When the throne room fell silent again, Robb looked at his blood-soaked sword and said, "It's over," but it wasn't. Not quite. In the days that followed, Robb refused the crown. He left the Iron Throne untouched. "The South can have its games," he said. "The North is going home." He freed Sansa. He sent ravens announcing Joffrey's death and Cersei's fall. Tyrion Lannister, freed from prison, agreed to broker peace with Dorne and the Reach. In exchange for his life and exile, the Iron Throne, scorched and broken in the siege, was left standing, empty, and the Seven Kingdoms splintered. The Stormlands chose Gendry Baratheon. The Reach crowned a Tyrell. The Riverlands followed Robb, for a time. But the North stood alone. Back in Winterfell, Robb was crowned again, not by force, not by fire, but by love. He knelt at the godswood where his father once prayed. "This is where it ends," he said softly, "and where we begin again." Jon Snow watched from the edge. Still torn, he looked at Arya, who now rode alone, vanishing into the far roads of the east. He looked at Sansa, standing tall, already rebuilding the broken North, and he looked at Robb, the brother who marched into hell and came back wearing scars instead of a crown. "You were never just a wolf." Jon said. Robb smiled. "Neither were you." And so the war ended, not with gold, not with dragons, but with a family broken and still standing. The Iron Throne remained empty, and in its place, from the snow-covered ruins of Winterfell, a new legend rose, one not of kings, but of wolves. The North remembered, and the realm would never forget.